Why avoidants come back when you finally move on is one of the most confusing, painful, and emotionally disorienting experiences you can go through. You spend months, sometimes years, trying to reach them, trying to love them, trying to understand their silence and coldness and distance. You hold space for their fear. You soften your voice. You adjust your needs. You lower your expectations. You try to meet them where they are, even when where they are keeps shifting further and further away. And then, when you finally let go, when your heart breaks in quiet, private ways, and you begin to rebuild your life, they suddenly reappear. A message, a like, a call, a small breadcrumb dropped into your world just when you were learning to live without them. It feels unfair. It feels cruel. It feels like emotional whiplash. But the truth behind why avoidants come back has nothing to do with manipulation or games. It's tied to the deepest layers of their attachment system, layers they don't understand, can't articulate, and spend their entire lives trying to outrun. When you finally move on, something in the avoidance internal world shifts in a way they didn't expect. At first, they don't notice you pulling away. They assume you'll always be there because you always have been. They've built their emotional ecosystem around your consistency, your messages, your warmth, your willingness to carry the connection. You became their emotional safety net, even if they acted like they didn't want it. So when you stop trying, not angrily, not dramatically, but quietly, it registers inside them in delayed waves. The absence of you hits differently. It doesn't hit like missing someone. Avoidants don't feel longing cleanly. It hits like an interruption in their routine, a subtle anxiety they can't name, a tension they describe as stress or being off, or suddenly restless for no reason. In their mind, they say, "Something feels wrong. Why do I feel unsettled?" They won't connect it to you at first, but they feel the shift. And underneath their calm exterior, their attachment system is waking up. The first trigger for their return is psychological. Avoidants feel safest when someone wants them but doesn't require much from them. When you move on, that balance shatters. The emotional safety they never thanked you for disappears. They no longer have someone who sees them, forgives them, waits for them, stabilizes them. Your presence allowed them to avoid themselves, to avoid intimacy, to avoid the parts of them they don't want to face. But when you detach, you force them to confront a truth. The emotional safety they took for granted wasn't guaranteed. There's a voice inside them, quiet, shaky, almost embarrassed, that whispers, "Did I lose the one person who understood me?" Then comes the avoidance inner monologue, sometimes only felt as flashes of discomfort. Wait, they're not checking on me anymore? Why didn't they reply this time? Are they done with me? Have they moved on? These thoughts don't appear out of love, not yet. They appear out of disruption, out of the loss of something they didn't know they leaned on. The second trigger that makes avoidance come back is emotional awakening. Avoidants don't process feelings in real time. They push them down, compartmentalize them, stay busy, numb out. When the relationship ends, they feel relief, not loss. Freedom, not heartbreak. Space, not grief. But emotional relief is not emotional truth. Their real feelings come later, much later. And your moving on is often the catalyst. When they see you healing, smiling, reconnecting with life, or even simply not chasing them, something painful stirs in them. a delayed grief, a late awareness, a realization that your presence was softer, safer, and more stabilizing than they understood. The avoidant inner voice cracks through again. I didn't think losing them would feel like this. Why does this bother me now? I thought I wanted distance. Why do I feel empty? Emotional awakening in avoidance is slow, but when it hits in deep, disorienting ways. They remember your kindness in moments when life grows heavy. They remember how you spoke to them when they were overwhelmed. They remember your patience, your warmth, your steadiness. Memories they ignored start to glow with a strange new intensity. They don't call it missing you. They call it thinking about them a lot lately, or feeling weirdly nostalgic. But that's what missing someone feels like for avoidance: distant, foggy, unsettling. And when they feel that way, their instinct is to reach for what once made them feel safe: you. The third and most powerful trigger for their return is attachment system activation. Avoidants operate on a specific emotional blueprint. They only feel safe when you are slightly out of reach, but still emotionally available. The moment you move on, emotionally, mentally, or physically, you flip the dynamic. Suddenly, you are not available at all. Suddenly, you are not predictable. Suddenly, they don't have access to your warmth. And for someone who has built their identity on control and emotional distance, this is terrifying. It shakes the foundation they rely on. Their attachment system, which usually remains dormant, begins to activate. Not in healthy ways, not in "I want to love you better," but in possessive, confusing, contradictory ways. What if they don't need me anymore? What if someone else gets the version of them I pushed away? What if I made a mistake? What if I want them back? It's not that they suddenly become emotionally available or capable of deep intimacy. It's that detachment triggers fear. Fear of replacement. Fear of losing their safety net. Fear of losing the one person who tolerated their emotional chaos. Fear that your absence means something about them. Avoidants take your love for granted because they assume it will always be there. The moment they sense that love is no longer theirs to return to, something primal kicks in. A need to reestablish emotional control. Not control over you, control over their inner security. This is why avoidants come back even when they don't want a relationship, even when they can't give you what you gave them, even when they know they might hurt you again. Their return is not a sign of readiness. It's a sign of activation. It's the fear of losing what they didn't nurture. It's regret mixed with confusion. It's longing mixed with avoidance. It's wanting to feel wanted without having to fully show up. Their inner voice at this stage sounds like, maybe I should reach out, just to see. What if they still care? What if I still matter to them? What if I wait too long and they never come back? Avoidants come back not because you're replaceable, but because you weren't. They come back because moving on is the one thing that breaks their emotional denial. It forces them to acknowledge feelings they pushed aside. It exposes the truth that they did feel something, just not in the open, easy way you did. And here's the hardest part. Avoidants come back because your moving on symbolizes a loss of safety. Not safety for you, safety for them. They come back to feel understood again, seen again, comforted again. They return to the version of themselves they could be with you, even if they didn't honor it at the time. But here is what you must understand. Avoidance returning does not mean they are ready for real intimacy. It does not mean they've healed. It does not mean the story will end differently. Their return is a gravitational pull toward what once felt emotionally regulating. It's about familiarity, not transformation. It's about comfort, not commitment. It's about the bond you built, not the effort they're ready to make. When avoidants come back, it's not because they've suddenly become capable of giving you the love you always deserved. It's because losing you woke up feelings they didn't want to feel. It's because seeing you move on forced them to confront the truth they tried to outrun. It's because your detachment cracked their emotional armor in ways they didn't expect. But whether they stay, whether they try, whether they transform, that part is not guaranteed. Some avoidants come back only to leave again. Some come back out of fear, not love. Some come back to soothe their own discomfort. And some return because they finally realized what you were offering wasn't ordinary. That you weren't asking for too much. That you weren't impossible to love. That you were simply asking for reciprocity, for presence, for connection, for effort. But even if they never say it, even if they never fully show it, your moving on becomes the turning point in their story. The moment they realize what losing you actually means. The moment they understand the quiet power you always had. Avoidants come back because your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. Your silence becomes the echo they can't ignore. And your healing becomes the mirror they can't face. That is the truth behind their return. And as you listen to this, as you breathe through the ache and the validation, remember this. You leaving didn't make you unlovable. It made you unavailable to someone who wasn't ready. And sometimes, moving on isn't the end of the story. It's the moment the story finally reveals itself. This is Attachment Alchemy Lab, and you're safe here.